So, welcome everybody. Greetings from Paris. My name is Bettina Al-Sadik-Lowinski, and first of all, I'd like to thank the Gruyter for organizing another panel with me today. And also, I'm very happy that they published already the second of my global researches. And this is what brought us here today. Let me just say a word about myself. I'm a gender researcher originally from Germany. You might hear my accent. And I have conducted various global researches with female and male executives. And so the ladies, why do we have men only today? Last time it were all the female, and today we really want to hear from the men, their thoughts and their insights. In my daily work, I'm an executive coach, and I support international leaders in their development. So our topic for this panel is gender collaboration, how men and women can work together in management. We know that companies with a good mix of the genders are more successful and produce better results. But it is still true on a global level that when most people think manager, they still think male. So the latest figures from Grant Thornton show us we are now at 33.5% participation of women on senior levels globally. And the number is stable compared to the year before. Looking at the CEO functions, however, the picture is different and the data show a significant drop. So we have been at 28% and we are down to 19 this year. So what does that tell us? We have to keep going and engage. And my engagement are these researchers. The previous one was 110 women in top management position. And for today, the latest research with men only, which has brought me in contact with fantastic male leaders, all interested in supporting women leaders. And I'm delighted to have 5 men here today, and they are all international leaders who will share their thoughts and insights. So how is this panel working? We had some technical problems and are still waiting for one or the other man to join. But I will start asking them one by one some questions, and then we will answer your questions from the chat, perhaps also in between. So please use the chat as from now and type your questions there. The session will be recorded for the ones who could not join today. Let's get started, and I'm delighted to introduce my first guest, and this is Xavier Gimeno. A very big welcome to Brazil. So he's recently located in Brazil and is the head of Saint-Gobain there for Latin America region. Before that, Xavier was Senior Vice President and CEO for the APAC, or Asia Pacific, I have to say, the whole Asia Pacific of Saint-Gobain. And he's also member of the executive committee of the company. Xavier is Spanish, so we have not only the German accent here, we will have a variety later on. And he has a degree in law and an MBA from IE Business School. And we will see later how that connects to another participant here. Welcome, Xavier. And I hope we will be on stage, both of us right now, to start with the first question. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Bettina. I'm very happy to be with you and with all our colleagues.
Thank you, Xavier. So I know you always had a great number of women in leading positions in APAC before at Saint-Gobain. And I remember when we collaborated there, your numbers far exceeded the French headquarters. How is that now in Saint-Gobain in South America?
It's quite good. We have quite good numbers also here in Latin America. We are a little bit above the group average, and we are slightly ahead of our targets. We are close to 40%. But as you know, Latin America is not a monolithic region, as Asia Pacific wasn't either. So we have countries where we are far above the targets, and there are countries where we are more recent presence, and then there is still quite a lot work to do. But all in all, the situation is good and is evolving in the right direction. It's particularly good in those countries where Saint-Gobain has been acting for many years. It's the case of Brazil, where we started some 90 years ago. But in some new countries like Uruguay or Ecuador, where we have just arrived, our numbers are a little bit below what they should be.
Mm. So APEC was a good number, and now South America was a good number. So Xavier, what's your recipe for having quite good numbers and high numbers of women in general manager position? I know some of them, and other senior roles at Saint-Gobain.
Well, there is no magic recipe, but I believe that above all, this is a matter of conviction. Conviction not only from the CEO of the company or from the top management, but shared and felt conviction throughout the organization. Conviction that gender equality is positive in a double perspective. Firstly, from a pure moral and ethical point of view, but also from the point of view of company management effectiveness, because we all know that diversity in terms of genders, in terms of ages, in terms of backgrounds and cultures, is a kind of richness that makes the company stronger, more effective, and better. So, besides this genuine conviction, I think that we have to have determination, um, so that this conviction is articulated in day-to-day programs, in concrete actions, in short, medium, and long-term targets and objectives. Without that, if you have not the possibility to measure your 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 your, your progress, and you don't articulate your ambition through specific programs, the progress are going to be more modest. And then I think that the last condition for success is perseverance. I have to be constant in your effort and in your direction. Uh, and then, gradually, gender equality will become an essential part of the culture of the company. One of those elements that make your company recognizable, credible, and in the long term, that inevitably will end by attracting female talent, because your company will be perceived as a fertile ground for professional development of women. So I think that those four elements are basically the pillars of any good program of female development in any company.
Mm. Thank you. And in the research, the men explained me that they actually see sponsoring as the main driver for bringing up a female talent in the organization. So you are a great sponsor of female talents. Women ask me often how they could find a male sponsor. What do you say to that question?
Well, you are using here the term sponsor, and for me here there is a difference between a sponsor and mentor.
Mhm.
Typically, in the timeline, the sponsorship goes beyond mentorship, and mentorship comes before the sponsorship. I think that while mentoring is about providing guidance and support, a sponsorship involves more active advocacy. It's about leveraging the influence of somebody in the company for the legitimate benefit of the career of somebody else. Um, my recommendation is you go first for mentorship and later on for sponsorship. I think that finding a good mentor and proving to this mentor all over the time that you can learn and grow from his advices and from the experience, that should encourage the mentor to wish to become your sponsor. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, for the rest, finding a sponsor within a company, I think, is not connected with gender, is regardless of gender. And that involves basically showcasing competence, reliability, ambition, potential of leadership. You need certainly to make yourself visible and make all those attributes that I have just mentioned visible in a continuous and consistent manner. And by doing so, I think that everybody should be in the conditions to find a good sponsor within the company, no matter if we are talking about a man or a woman.
My last question for the moment, Xavier, and we will see more of you later, is, I hear a lot from women and they report, well, this was a difficult male partner for me, or I feel unfair treated. So what would you advise your daughter if she comes home, and you have a smart daughter now studying or almost finished, I don't know, if she tells you that a male is competing with her or treating her, let's say, in a way that she feels is emotionally hard, what would you tell her? What should she do?
Well, the first thing I would tell her is to stay professional and focused on work. She has to maintain her professionalism and her focus on delivering her best work. Second, I will ask her to make crystal clear to the colleague who is unfair with her the way she's feeling and the specific reasons why she feels unfairly treated. For sure, I will ask her to firmly ask for the unfair behavior to stop. Another advice that could be helpful is to document instances of unfair treatment. I think that keeping a record of specific instances where you feel the competition has been unfair is going to be helpful if things don't improve and there is need to discuss the situation with HR or another authority within the company. And if you reach the point where you have triggered the involvement of the senior management and the unfair treatment still remains, I think that my advice to my daughter would be to leave such a company, because certainly this company has no the culture, has no the principles which are key for any woman to develop her career on equal conditions compared to men.
Okay, so I think ladies are listening to us here and got some advice on these points. So I want to say thank you for the moment, and we come back and we have the first questions in the chat, but I see they are relating to something that I will ask later. So my second guest is Camille Gilkens from the Netherlands. And he's global CEO of Schouten and Nielsen. Camille is also a doctorate student now at IE University and is linked you to Xavier without knowing each other. So I've known Camille from my time in Shanghai, and his family for me is really a role model for a family where both partners follow their careers on an equal level. Camille, my question to you, from your perspective, what are the three major reasons for the imbalance in senior management that we still see in many countries?
Yeah. First of all, Bettina, thank you for having me. I think you had a session with female leaders, now male leaders. I can see what's coming next, of course, and thank you, Xavier, for sharing your wisdom. If I look at the unbalance I see across the globe, and I work in 60 countries, I see three key things. The first one is just as society, how we look at female leaders. Or, for example, female leaders in tech. And there are still so many biases there, and I think we really need to mirror the system, address it, talk about it, and change it. The second one is I feel that a lot of companies are still not doing enough to promote equality. If you look at payment, if you look, for example, leadership programs, I feel we can and we should do much better. So we really should, if you want to change something, and I liked what Xavier was saying, you need to have a vision, you need to have your KPIs and follow them. And I think we should do better there. And the third one, and that's maybe more discussion in the Netherlands, but I feel as a society we should do better in providing care. which really help female leaders and male leaders to make a career at the same time. I like what I do, try to do at home. And I think a better care system really supports that. So it's really how we look at society. It's about the policies we have as companies to promote equality. And it's for certainly also social care.
Yeah, so many things to be done. It's a complex topic, and of course, women want this train that is running. The men in my research said, well, the train is running for them, and numbers are getting higher, but they want it to be faster, of course.
The numbers are not that good.
Yeah.
If you look at female leaders, we are at 30%, but the growth is slowing. And if you look what you were saying, if you look at executive level, CEO level, it actually dropped. And again, diversity is important. Inclusivity even more important, because we all know diverse organizations perform better. Right. They are more creative, are able to win talents, are better places to be. So this is an important fight we are dealing here.
Let's go a little bit deeper into gender collaboration, Camille. And we want to go away from this thing that men are the ones who are to be blamed and women are the victims. Yeah, so we want to be really out of this situation here. So my question would be, what major mistakes can women leaders make in their work relation with a male? What have you observed? What drives men really crazy and angry?
Well, first, I think you always need to be authentic. Act like who you are, show your values, show what's important. And if you do that, you cannot make mistakes. If you look at leadership, we really know what's working well. It's about, I liked before we were talking about, it's about people. We have female leaders and male leaders, but it's about setting a strategy. It's about having a vision and get people enthusiastic for your vision. It's about looking at the whole system. It's about showing yourself. It's about keep growing, keep learning, and be there for your team. I think as a female leader, if you do that well, then you will grow. On the other hand, if you look at male leaders, a lot of things to change there. And I also want to emphasize that, because from my perspective, female leaders are not the issue. It's the whole system. And if you want to change it, we need to look at the whole system. And I think as male leaders like me, we need to challenge our own biases. And we need to look at other industries where you see a lot more female leaders, like, for example, fashion, and see what we can learn from it. But if you talk about mistakes, we know what it takes to be a good leader. Do that. Be that creative leader who has both the being and the doing. And from my perspective, you cannot make mistakes there. I see you thinking. What's on your mind?
Well, I heard in the interview things where men were reporting, well, a different expectation that they had to a female than they would have with a male. Yeah. So, for example, criticism was taken much different when it comes from a woman, whereas if it comes from another male, the man would take it very different and in a way learned, how you are amongst men. But then when a woman does the same thing, probably it was taken much harder. Have you seen something like that?
And I love that you bring this up, because I think in many organizations we have this idea of how a leader should act. It's like a mall. And new talents, new leaders, new female leaders, they need to fit in that mall. But if you think from that perspective, I think as an organization, you will never become an inclusive organization, and you need to turn it around. So how can we adjust the mold, that core idea of how a leader should be, and help to make it fit to the person, to the individual, and be a lot more flexible and be able to stretch it. And if we keep that idea of that mold, and the leader should fit in that mold, we make decisions in the evening, when we drink, when we have fun, when we are on the sun, whatever. If that keeps being the core idea, I think you can never become an inclusive organization. And I think then you are fighting a lost battle. So my idea, my concept is really to the mold, that idea of leadership should fit a person and not the other way around.
I had men say that they wish that women stay real women and do not act as copies or treat that.
Again, for me, that's a voice of a system that needs to be fixed. The problem are not those female leaders. The system needs to be fixed. And if there is fear, for me, that's a voice of the system that you need to mirror, that you need to talk about, that you need to adjust. But again, those female leaders are not the issue there. It's the system.
It's the system. And then it stays a little bit above us, no? When it comes to gender collaboration, there's one person in front of the other and they need to act, right?
True. And what would be your question?
I don't know. When they have expectations, perhaps it's what should women focus on? What should they be proud of?
Well, if I look at my own environment, it's complex. It's changing very rapidly. What we need in our business environments is more collaboration, more connection, and more collaboration, more connections, deeper relationships. And to achieve that, I think we need to be more curious. We need to do deep listening. And those are maybe qualities that we see more in women, or that we tend to see more in women. So at least as a female leader, stick to those qualities, but also as male leaders, I think if you really want to make a difference in today's complex world, and we need to stimulate collaboration, we need to stimulate creativity, and you do that by being curious and practice deep listening from my point of view. Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Camille.
Thank you.
Thank you, and stay here. We will have more questions to come. Welcome, Johannes. My next guest is Dr. Johannes Schmidt-Schultes. Johannes is a former senior executive with over 30 years experience as group CFO and board director in various industries. And I looked through his CV, a lot of company names and a lot of countries. So Johannes is now running his own senior advisory business out of Vienna, and he holds a diploma degree in economy and a PhD from the University of Munich. Welcome, Johannes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Johannes, when it comes to conflict between genders, very often men are the ones to be blamed and women are the victims. So what are some of the typical conflicts that only come between men and women in senior levels that you have observed during your corporate time?
Yeah, look, let's not necessarily talk about business-related conflicts, right? I think conflicting viewpoints like different opinions, marketing campaigns or structural stuff like that, I think that's not what really kind of the interesting one. More relevant, I think, from my perspective, and more interesting to elaborate on this and not honestly named tensions between male and female leaders, which from my perspective, normally in most instances kind of circle around different styles these leaders show and what I would call the inherent working atmosphere resulting from these kind of different styles. I'm thinking of, for example, collaboration style, communication style, the way how we are engaging with our employees, how we provide feedback. Basically, we talk about the overall management styles. And the result is normally you do it differently from me. You need to adjust. You need to get tougher or you have to get softer. So the conflict, from my perspective, arises in a very specific misalignment and a disagreement between the leaders. And I think in many cases, a lack of tolerance and an unwillingness to honestly accept these different styles and the different approaches. And frankly speaking, this happens on both sides of the aisle. And if this is really the case, then the conflicts can get even worse, right?
So I hear, or we read still, and there's tons of researches about these so-called boys' clubs, no? What do women, but also men listening to us have to understand about these mechanisms of the boy club?
Yeah, look, I think as we all know, the higher you get in an organization, the lesser female leaders are present. That's just the reality. and the more male-dominated teams are the reality. In my experience, boys often have been growing together within the same organization. They frequently have been buddies for a very, very long time. We're spending time outside the office, smirking about the same silly jokes, pitching about the same people, and so on and so on. I think these clubs have their own dynamic. And honestly, not only for females, they are hard to understand or even to get into. Same for people from outside, joining the organization as a new hire, for example. I have experienced these clubs throughout my career every single time when I started a new role. And frankly speaking, these clubs, they are a pain. They are on the same levels, they are across hierarchies, they sometimes even encompass people from outside organization. They have their own rules, and they are hard to learn. I think from my perspective, it's pointless to even try to get behind the scenes of these clubs. There is no chance. Much more important, from my perspective, is really kind of to be aware of the clubs, to acknowledge their existence, preferably explicit. It might be helpful to deliberately kind of refer to the strong relationship amongst these kind of guys. And sometimes it might also help really kind of to address them publicly in a playful, authentic manner, in a way. Look, guys, I know that you belong together, all good, but we are here to serve the business and not necessarily to develop Boy Scouts. I think often naming the obvious is clearing the air for the better, I suppose.
Yeah, and with that, you already answered the next question I had prepared, so I can go to the chat. A woman here is writing to us. She regularly had problems with male counterparts as a very attractive woman. It prevented her from being promoted because, let me summarize that, also the CEO I had to report to was frightened to be seen with me going to lunch. So, because in the old boy networks, of course, all these things are not there, then it's easy for them. So what would you say to that question?
Yeah, look, I think it's why was she not promoted in a way? Was she not promoted because she was a woman or because she was just outside of the club? So I think the problem with the clubs is it's hard. It's nearly impossible to get into these clubs. The only thing to deal with it, I think, constructively is naming their existence and raising the awareness within the organization. That's definitely helpful. And ultimately, I think consolidating people outside of these clubs, I think it's not only comforting and consoling, but I think it's also strengthening and much more effective from a leadership and from a business perspective, I suppose.
Okay, so not trying to get into it, even as a man who is not a member of such a club, but naming it and bringing it up in the organization. Okay.
And like really kind of trying to, to consolidate the people, other people who are experiencing exactly the same. Look, normally these boys clubs, they are not huge. I think it's a handful of people, but quite frequently they are powerful. What I have experienced in various organizations, it is, they are the decision makers. But as long as it is addressed and as long as the organization is acknowledging their existence and have their own kind of rules, then when it comes to coalitions outside of these clubs, it's definitely much, much more powerful at the end.
Okay, thank you, Johannes, for the moment. I'm coming to my next guest, and this is Edwin Dienda. He is at Huawei, now calling in from Thailand. So we have both sides of the world here. And Edwin is responsible for the digital journey of clients in such areas as energy transition and carbon neutrality. So prior to this, he was CTO and became a vice president of the public sector of his company. And he was recognized a most valued professional in Huawei enterprise. And I know Edwin as a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion, as we both were active with Shihiro, a big company in the APAC area for this topic. Edwin is also a part-time lecturer at the Huawei University. Welcome, Edwin. When we talk about gender collaboration, there are advantages if it works very well for the organization. Can you summarize for us the main advantages for the company if gender collaboration works really good for teams? What would you say?
Well, I like, thanks for having me, by the way. I like the conversation and how the different inputs from the different people are circling around the specific topics. For example, the topic of gender. I think if you look at diversity in teams, I think what we talk about is the characteristics and the different traits and the capability that people bring into those teams as they work either on a common task or, what I like better, as they work on a certain task that needs to lead or that leads into a certain direction. The task leads to a certain direction, and that means there is a common goal. When there is a common goal, then if you bring people together with characteristics and maybe personality traits that come from different backgrounds, such teams tend to perform a little better than if you select people, for example, half male, half female. The gender part, I think, doesn't matter that very much. What really matters is that you bring together people from different backgrounds that have different characteristics and different traits and capabilities. And these can, or maybe are, of course, sometimes gender related, or they could be, let's say, more female from a tender point of view. They tend to be more female, or other characteristics and other traits and personality traits are perhaps more male, but do not necessarily have to come from a male or from a female. But when I think about diversity, and when I think about how teams that are diverse work on a certain task that leads towards a certain direction, then if you have a team of 5 or 8 or 9 folks working together, the mix of these characteristics create a stronger output than if you would follow the straightforward path of this requires male only, or this more female in the team and less male in the team. So that's the first point I'd like to point out. In my personal experience and in my company experience, we also see that if you have a common task or work on a certain project or work within certain programs and certain initiatives where different characteristics and different personality traits are merging and blending, what we see and what I see is that people learn more from each other and about each other. And it's almost like this Bryan Adams song together with Rod Stewart and what was it, some other folks, like All for One and One for All from a couple of years, well, from a long time ago. I guess it shows my age in this case. But there's a common understanding that says all for one and one for all. That really works very well, I would say, specifically with teams that are diverse and that don't look at each other from their differences, but that appreciate each other because of the capability that has to be recognized is lacking with the team or with the program that a group of people currently are working on, and it's not scaling very much, or it's not growing very hard, or it's not moving very fast. Certainly not higher up the value chain. So also in my experience, I can say that the teams that are the most diverse with regards to the diversity that I just mentioned, which is aimed towards the characteristics and the personalities and the capability traits, so to speak, or personality traits and capabilities of that team, drive this further and higher up the value chain, I would say. And if you then look at the actual people, you could say that a good and a healthy mix of male and female, so to speak, or a good mix of these different diverse capabilities and personality traits and characteristics create a very strong, cohesive team. And they also convert into what sometimes people refer to as corporate culture. which people would say a company has a corporate culture and it's appealing to new hires or not, or to new recruits or new staff. I would say corporate culture starts to develop when you put people with these diverse backgrounds and characteristics together, because as they work together and as they collaborate, they develop their own language almost. They develop their own way of working. They develop their own dimensions. Maybe they create this little group of people that Johannes was referring to earlier that sometimes exists, like the boys network or not. I wouldn't say it's then a boys network, but it becomes a group of people that are so strong together that by that they create their own culture. They have their own culture. I would say corporate culture is that. And I think these combinations of these three parts together, I would say, would drive these kind of initiatives much stronger.
Yeah. Right. We have a question from the chat here, and a lady is asking, have you ever met situation when the expectation on women were higher than the one on their male counterparts? What happens when a woman joining the executive team is delivering better results repeatedly? Will she get a chance to become the next CEO, or will she be constantly challenged and held down by her colleagues? That's the question. What do you say to that?
That's a tough question, because you can approach it from so many different angles.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Cool conversation, and thank you for the question. So when become men male allies? So I think this always has two parts. One is a personal part, is that someone has some personal experiences, or he has some, maybe he's a father of daughters, and then he starts to get to know that he has some privilege. So privilege is always a good starting point, that everyone knows that we have privilege, or we are privileged. So, and then the second part is the part from the business part. So what I see is that always, and in Austria and in the German-speaking area, in the DACH region, we say we see that all the business or the leadership parts are from a very conservative way. So I think 90% of the real major leading position here in Austria are held by men. So so here we see that it's very important to get the men on this table, and not to leave it just a women issue, female issue, that diversity, or it's just it's a female issue. And when we start, or when we see men becoming male allies, is that they see a concrete diversity as a business topic, that it's a future topic, it's a business topic, it's relevant for the business strategy. And here we really, so that's why we created Sheconomy and Weconomy, to really translate this topic from the diversity creates innovation. Diversity has a better return on investment. We here want to really translate it, and to show best practices or concrete topics. Like, so always when I see when I met people or leaders, then I tell the story about David Salomon is the CEO of Goldman Sachs, and he said 5 years ago, I think, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, that Goldman Sachs will only spend financial topics and so on to companies which have at least one diverse board member. So, and when I say this, all of the men have a listen to me and say, okay, why does he say that? It's clear that Goldman Sachs has really a lot of figures, and they say companies with diverse board members have a better performance. This will lead to higher return on investment, and so the stakeholders get more return on their investments. So this is a clear topic, and there are a lot of other issues, like, you know, it's harder to get employees right now for companies. Yeah,
Mhm.
you have to really to transform the company to a diverse, open company to get better employees. Or you have a look at the stakeholders out there. That if you have 50% of your customers are female, and you're a tech company or so on, and you have only 100% in your tech team are men developing new services. So then if you addressed it, then men, so, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense for the team. This makes sense for the company. If you have a diverse team, then we will produce better solutions for our customers. So in this area, so I think it's a mix between the personal experiences and the business related topics, and every company starts from a different point of view, and everyone has to collect data, why it's important for the business, and then address it, and then you can really spread it within the company.
Yeah, so when I analyzed the interviews, there were probably three parts here that you also mentioned. So one was, of course, about ethical reasons and fairness. Then the hard topic was the KPI results. So
Yep.
this is also the answer when we are asked, so what, how can we encourage male who are in the power seats, to engage here? And then interestingly, one thing I found here that most men had daughters. So I have not yet enough data around that, but men who have daughters seem to have an approach here. They see with their daughters, what they would need to start a good job and so on. So they open up for the topic. But this is just a side comment here. So what is your suggestion then? What can companies do to encourage their male leaders to become allies and become more active with that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think every company is a little bit different. So there are, in every industry, they start from a different starting point. First of all, I think companies should really collect data on it, how the company looks like, not just to have, we have 50% of our employees are female, but really have a closer look in which teams, how it depends, and where it's located. And then you have to set a goal. So I think, why is it important? Why are diverse teams? Why is gender equality an important goal for the company? And then you really have to address one of the leadership team. So really to have a sponsor within the leadership team. It's always one of the main points to start this diversity marathon, I think. And then if you have collected the data, then you have a goal, and then you have to set some KPIs, because if you cannot measure it, you can manage it, I think. So this is really this is crucial to this topic. Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think it's always good to have a clear understanding why diversity or gender diversity is a relevant topic for the company. And here, I think you have to work out 3 to 4 main arguments, and then you have to spread it in the company, really to have your leadership team on the same page, to discuss it with them, and that they have also to discuss it with their teams. A second part is also to work on the biases. I think everyone, and we discussed it, every one of us has biases, and of course, we like to work with small mini Hermans, and so on, but I think this is not the best way. Yeah. And another thing is the equal pay topic is also to have some. This is a crucial thing. So to really have the equal, to address the equal pay in your company. And another thing is, and I see it's, so you mentioned we work with about 100 companies here, and in every discussion is one key topic is this leaving periods. So the parental leave, so I think every company has really to to have a closer look and what the employees, the needs in these leaving periods, not just for childcare, also for care issues, also for sabbaticals, don't know. And if you address it like a leaving period, and not just as a parental leaving, you get out the stigmata on parents or on women. So you open it up to a bigger level, because every employee, every person has some need for leaving periods. And if you address it and it's a normal topic, then the employee will get really early to you that he or she needs to have a leaving period, and then you can manage these leaving periods much better. This is a big effort for every company, but I think it's worth it. And then you create really a better belonging, and you also set a better support for female or for parents. I think this is also a very good issue. You have a closer look at.
Yeah, we could do a panel on its own on this topic, of course. Thank you, Hermann. And let's join all together and look at the chat again. So I have one question here, and then you can say who wants to answer that. What is your suggestion to a female employee? How can she react properly when facing unfair treatment? What would you say to that question from the chat?
Well, maybe if I may react, I think the first thing is always focus on your results. What do you want to create? I love what Javier was saying. It's about staying professional. Treat other people like you want to be treated, and then really address the topic. Make it discussable, mirror the system. But I think those three things are key. Focus on your own results, stay professional, and talk about it, make it discussable. I think if you do those three things, you are on the right track.
Yeah, I would agree. And if I may add, I also replied a little bit in the chat, because you can type your answer as well, which I did. The approach that you could take on this part, I think, is rather similar to having a conversation with your boss or with your team leader about promotion or salary increase. Camille hit it on the nail on the head there with regards to be professional, be objective, be factual, I would say, but also don't be demanding. I think what you want to do is you want to create an ally with your counterpart, that you jointly come to the point where you recognize that there is an option to improve, and what should be the next step for that improvement that you then jointly take, either jointly as a team or you very specifically as an individual with your manager or department head, very individual. In light of the bigger picture, I would say, I think the underlying, I was going to say argument, but that's not what I mean. But I can't find a word exactly for what it is. So let's stick with argument. The underlying argument here is that it is not because you demand it. What needs to be demanded in this particular case, and needs to be followed, I would say. So the underlying argument would be the company is improving on this. The whole organization is on a journey to do better what they already do best. And this is one part that maybe fell between the cracks, and you want to pick it up jointly or in community or collaborative, and jointly you recognize and observe that there are differences in how achievements are being appreciated. So turn it around, I would say, and bring it to the table as an improvement point that you are willing to work on, if they are willing to work on it as well.
Okay, thank you, Edwin, for this. So we are coming almost to the end, but I won't leave you going here without giving me one piece. If we all as a team here had to design a vision for the future of gender collaboration, please, each of you, what piece would you say is your piece or your major advice that you would give to a shared vision of this panel here for us today? I would start with Xavier because he started. Xavier, what would be your biggest piece for a vision of gender collaboration for the future? You are on mute. You have to unmute.
Yes, no, I was saying that to a certain extent, I think that we all are still prisoners of some traditional views and we are prisoners of the traditional profile of men and women. And I think that we must be in our companies, in our own perimeter of responsibility, catalyzers for that old perception to move and those traditional profiles to get completely updated. I think that when it comes to the business world, the difference men and women makes little sense. It's more about a style of management, it's more about performance, it's more about leadership, and those qualities are individual, are not connected with a given gender. So I think that it's in that direction that we should all move.
Thank you. Camille, what would be your piece?
Well, for me, this is really the moment to make our organizations more inclusive. So this is the moment, and to achieve that, I feel we as leaders, we need to be role models. So really walk the talk and really make our organizations more equal. And maybe it's as important, ensure our direct reports do the same. So have that vision, have KPIs, and make them really accountable to achieve a minimum of 30% female leaders in our leadership teams.
Wonderful. Johannes, do you have a piece for us?
Look, for me, it's critical that we acknowledge that we have differences in styles, the way we operate, in management styles in general. But these different styles can definitely coexist. They are complementing each other. And by complementing it, I think we are adding different styles together for the better of the entire organization. In that context, we have to trust each other, that we all have good intentions to deliver, and we have to be tolerant when it comes to different styles. And acknowledging with a tolerance, I would expect in general that we as a society have to develop that we can coexist and we are complementing each other. And by acknowledging, we are building trust, we have tolerance. Ultimately, this is driving inclusion. And that's more or less for me the four words which always come together, all surrounded by authenticity. Only by these kind of attributes, I think we will be able to make it a better place, ultimately.
Okay, thank you. Edwin, very short because we run over the time. What's your piece for the vision?
All for one and one for all. I said it before, and what I mean by that is we combine our forces, so we create a joint force of the best of you and the best of me and the best of others to drive a certain initiative forward. That's what we should bring to the table, unbiased in this particular case. Lead by example is another one that Camille also mentioned.
Wonderful.
I second that.
Thank you. Herman, you have the last piece then, or perhaps let's see.
A lot of is already said. So I think that's why we started Sheconomy. It's a we economy. It's joint forces. I think also authenticity. We should set a structure where all can bring their best in, and not just, you mentioned that better female, not should be better male. So I think the combination is the part.
So I have to say I'm delighted that you came, that you spent time with us early in the morning, later in the evening in Asia. Thank you so much. I know you are all busy, you have important jobs, but you took the time on this important topic here, and I thank you from my full heart on that. I thank very much the Gruyter, because their publishing house is now supporting me for a while and believes in these researches and in the books. And you can read more secrets secrets, probably what the men haven't talked about here today in the book. Yeah. And if you like to hear more about it, just invite me. I'd be happy to speak in your company, in your organization, and also on an individual level. If you need executive coaching, let me know. I hope you all get one thing to reflect on from this panel today, and I wish you all a very nice day and say goodbye from Paris, and hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.